At 1:04 in the morning, the quiet stillness of Oak Ridge, Arizona was broken as my porch light flickered uneasily, illuminating the desert-dry front lawn of my modest home. The night air buzzed faintly, the sound of distant motorcycles carrying along the empty highway. Remnants of restless youth chasing their ghosts across the dark. That calm was shattered by a frantic pounding on the door, not a knock asking for permission, but a desperate, uneven banging, as if the very night was being split open. "Mom, please open up." The fear in her voice froze me in place for half a heartbeat. I knew it was my daughter, Emily. In an instant, instinct took over. I rushed to the door, pulling aside the deadbolt. Before I could even catch my breath, Emily stumbled through the frame and collapsed straight into my arms. Her hair was tangled, her lower lip split and bleeding, her left eye already swelling shut and ghastly violet. Both hands clutched her stomach, the way you hold yourself together when you feel like your world is falling apart. Sometimes, the body knows what to do before the mind can catch up. I scooped her up and carried her to the cinder-worn sofa, grabbing the nearest faded blanket to wrap around her fragile frame. I wanted to comfort her, but my eyes, trained by years on the force, darted to the corner of our hallway where my police uniform hung pressed and ready. Tonight, both sides of me, a mother and an officer, were being called to the table, tested by a horror I thought we'd never face. Before I go any further, let me tell you who we really are. My name is Martha Jenkins, though most in Oak Ridge just call me Marty. I've been a patrol sergeant in this sun-baked town for well over 20 years. Oak Ridge isn't a big place, but rumors spread faster here than wildfire in monsoon season. This is the kind of community where every neighbor knows your dog's birthday, but still believes every whisper they hear through the grapevine. Emily, my only child, is 26. She grew up chasing desert lizards behind our house, harmonizing with every pop song on the radio, and promising me she'd always find her way home. In the past year, I watched her grow more distant. Her laughter came less easily. She stopped sharing where she was going. I tried to convince myself it was just the stress of adulthood. I wanted to believe she was fine, but deep down, I sensed a gathering storm. There's one more thing you need to understand. My father toiled for decades to secure a patch of land just outside Oak Ridge, a sun-beaten field he loved and passed down to us. Now the deed sits in Emily's name, a piece of our family's legacy. That land would soon become the focus of a fight we never imagined. As I held Emily close, her body trembling, the sound of her battered voice echoed in my ears. She was ghost pale, nearly gray beneath the kitchen glow. Her breathing came shallow and rough. I wet a towel and gently dabbed the blood from her mouth, my hands shaking despite years on the job. I wanted to explode with questions, demand to know who had done this, but her eyes told me more than words ever could. Something had been shattered in her long before tonight. I picked up my phone, my pulse thundering in my head. I called the one person I trusted at the emergency room. "Dr. Fitzgerald? It's Marty. I'm bringing my daughter. Get a bed ready, please." My ancient sedan was still in the shop, so I ordered a cab as my hands fumbled for my keys. While we waited, Emily's phone began to buzz and glow on the coffee table, urgent and relentless. Missed calls. Dozens of threatening messages lit the screen from her husband, Chris. My blood turned cold with rage. One message flashed on the screen. "Keep your mouth shut if you want to keep what's yours." I reached for the phone, but Emily snatched it back with shaking hands. Her voice was barely there, frayed with fear. "Mom, don't. If you answer, it just gets worse." I wanted to press, to demand answers, but instead, I squeezed her hand and whispered, "You're safe here. No one is going to hurt you now." Inside, I made a vow, a silent promise that this night would be the start of a record, an official paper trail he couldn't erase. For victims like Emily, the world too often writes over your pain. Tonight, I knew we would write it down, line by line, proof no one could ignore. At Oak Ridge General, the ER lights cut the night open. Dr. Julia Fitzgerald, my old ally from dozens of midnight calls, swept us back without hesitation. I knew her routine by heart, but this time, every move tore through me. Nurses checked Emily's vitals, gently rolling up her clothes. The sick, dark bruise blooming along Emily's abdomen drew a collective gasp. Dr. Fitzgerald ordered x-rays, a CT, blood work, all the steps for internal wounds you hope aren't fatal. I saw the calculation in her eyes, the silent weighing of, was this an accident? I motioned to the charge nurse, my voice low. We need documentation, copies of everything, every picture, every note for the record. She nodded without a word. We'd both seen too many cases like this left undocumented, dismissed as just a fight. Machines hummed around us. Emily squeezed my fingers and trembled. Over and over, she whispered, "Don't let him find me," her breath catching each time. I gathered myself, pressing my forehead to hers. "Not while I'm breathing," I promised. By morning, Dr. Fitzgerald handed me a sealed file, imaging reports, injury photos, discharge papers. Not just treatment, I thought. Testimony. We returned home beneath the first rays of sunrise streaking over Oak Ridge. The quiet of morning felt false, brittle. As I stepped onto the porch, I caught my neighbor, Doris Carter, sweeping her walk. Doris, an institution on our block, paused and hurried near, face pinched with concern. "Marty, I heard crying last night." "What happened?" I wavered, then told her, quietly, what Chris had done. Doris's face hardened. "That man's trouble." Then, tapping her phone with focus, she said, "My porch cam records everything, you know. Maybe it caught something." We huddled over the small screen. There, 10 minutes past midnight, Emily, weak at the door, her voice muffled but unmistakable. My heart clenched all over again, but this time proof was in the pixels. Doris sent the footage right to my cloud drive. She pressed my hand fierce. "If you need anything, let me know. I'll stand up with you." It was the start of a pattern, the circle closing ranks. I quickly encrypted the file, stashing it in a backup folder. For the first time, this evidence was bigger than my word or Emily's fears. The facts were visible. Our story was becoming harder to erase. That afternoon, my phone buzzed from a number I knew by heart. Tom Murphy, the longtime clerk at the county records office. Tom's voice was uneasy. "Marty, your name and Emily's just showed up on a land transfer file." My stomach lurched. "What transfer?" He sighed, lowering his voice. "Looks like Emily signed the family land over to a woman named Rachel Vaughn. But the signatures, they're all wrong. And the notary stamp wasn't even scheduled that day." I drove straight downtown. Tom met me with a thick folder. The signatures were unmistakably forgeries. Emily's name trembled in an awkward, unfamiliar slant. "Mine too. Chris brought it," Tom confided. "Said you asked him to file it since you were busy." My fist tightened so hard my nails left marks on my palm. The land my father had sweated for, and Chris was trying to pluck it away with a forged document. I demanded certified copies of everything. Tom agreed, but cautioned. Someone at the office helped push it through. "Watch your back, Marty." When I walked away with the file, I knew our fight was more than bruises. It was lies stacked in courthouse folders. The next morning, I took the evidence and drove to the hardware store where Chris worked. The place smelled of dust, grease, and stale tobacco. A couple of his friends hovered by the counter. One sneered as I walked in. "Look, it's the mother-in-law." I ignored him, pushing through to Chris's cramped back office. He sat counting stacks of worn bills, smug. "Sergeant Jenkins. Here to shop or just to nag?" I set a plain folder on his desk, sliding it in front of him. Inside were the photos from the ER, Doris's porch footage, hospital discharge notes, and counterfeit deed, each a blow to his veneer of power. For a fraction of a second, his bravado faltered. "What am I supposed to do with this?" he demanded, voice brittle. "I have better lawyers than you." I locked eyes with him. "You aren't expected to do anything. The court will take care of the rest." He leaned forward, steel in his voice. Emily needed discipline. "Don't count on your badge to save you every time." My blood boiled, but I stood my ground. From now on, the law decides. No more threats, no more deals in the dark. That night, gossip flooded Oak Ridge. At the market, the feed store, the greasy spoon off Main. "She's a cop. Of course she's trying to ruin Chris." Emily's always been dramatic, making things up for attention. Each word stung deeper than I'd ever admit. Many people will believe the lie that lets them sleep easier, but I walked on, back straight, eyes level. A night later, I returned home to find an envelope tucked under my door, no return address, my name scrawled in angry black ink. Inside was a single slip of paper. Keep quiet or lose your daughter. My hands trembled, not from fear but righteous anger. I slipped it into the evidence folder, knowing someday it would be read aloud in court. I called Chief Ryan Espinosa, my captain at the station. I need extra patrols on our street. Emily's staying at Doris Carter's, and Chris's friends have been lurking. His reply was careful, but supportive. You're putting yourself at risk, but we'll have your back. Just document everything. I didn't sleep much that week, but determination kept me moving. I also knew the case would remain fragile until someone close to Chris confessed. That break came as whispers turned to rumors about Rachel Vaughn, the woman whose name was on the fraudulent deed, spotted arm in arm with Chris just days after Emily left. I heard Rachel spent her evenings at the Blue Cactus Bar, a neon-lit dive on the edge of Hidalgo Street. On a chilly Thursday night, I threw on my oldest jacket, the one nobody recognized, and slid into a dark booth in the corner. Just after 10, Rachel walked in. Confident stride, red dress, a rum and coke in hand. She made her way to the bar, but from up close I saw a worry behind her eyes. I waited, then quietly slid an envelope across the table, copies of the deed, a printout of her mounting debts. I kept my voice low. Chris can't keep you safe, but telling the truth might, she scoffed. But her hands shook as she flipped through the paperwork, the color draining from her face as the weight of it set in. He told me I'd have a fresh start, a slice of land if I helped him. Now I just feel used. I looked her in the eyes. You can tell the court what happened. You'll be protected. Rachel hesitated, then nodded, tears brimming. I'll do it, but only if you promise me safety. It was the first time in weeks I felt the tide shift. With Rachel's testimony, we finally had a chance. The next morning, my lawyer, Thomas Grant, spread the evidence across his polished table. Photos of Emily's injuries, Dr. Fitzgerald's signed report, Doris's porch video, the menacing note, the phony deed, all lined up. Piece by piece, Thomas tapped each file in turn. Exhibit A, medical records. Exhibit B, surveillance video. Exhibit C, threatening messages. Exhibit D, fraudulent property transfer. I added, Exhibit E, Rachel's signed and notarized statement about Chris's bribes and threats. Thomas nodded. We're ready to apply for protective orders, right now. Within hours, Judge Deborah Keyes signed a restraining order, prohibiting Chris from contacting Emily or Rachel. Chief Espinosa helped find a safe house for both women, an address even Chris's closest friends couldn't guess. That night, for the first time in a month, I slept more than a few hours at a stretch. We finally had a fortress made of facts. Rumors could swirl, but evidence stood like stone. At the courthouse hearing, every pew was filled. Neighbors, former co-workers, curious strangers. The room stilled as Judge Keyes entered and called for silence. Thomas spoke first. Your Honor, this isn't about speculation, but documented harm. Medical records, video, texts, and deeds. He began with Dr. Fitzgerald's testimony, her measured voice. Clinical but devastating. The bruises could not be from a simple fall. Thomas played the porch camera footage. Emily, knocking feebly at my door, her broken voice echoing in the silent courtroom. People gasped at the sight, pain that even words couldn't erase. Next, the threatening text flashed on the projector, authenticated by phone logs. Keep your mouth shut if you want to keep what's yours. Nobody could turn away. Tom Murphy, under oath, detailed the inconsistencies in the supposed deed, the notary error, the mismatched signature. Chris paled as the truth spread through the room, impossible to deny. Finally, Rachel Vaughn stepped forward, voice shaky, hands clenched. Chris promised me a cut if I signed. I believed him once, but he used me. He hurt Emily and tried to implicate me. As she spoke, Chris erupted. You liar! The judge's gavel cut him off. When I took the stand, my uniform felt heavier than usual. I'm a police officer, I declared, but I'm testifying here simply as a mother. The man who did this, who tried to steal my daughter's future, is not a victim. He is an abuser, and the law is here to protect those without a voice. Chris's lawyer, Victor Bryant, tried to twist the facts, hinting at personal grudges and police bias, but his arguments crumbled against the evidence in front of everyone. By the time Thomas Grant finished his closing, the courtroom was silent, heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. Judge Keyes returned with her ruling, voice steady, eyes meeting mine. First, a full protective order for Emily and Rachel. Second, the property transfer is nullified and the land returned to its rightful owner. Third, Chris's assets are frozen, pending a criminal investigation for domestic assault, fraud, and witness intimidation. Some in the crowd audibly sighed. Chris slumped in his chair as 2 deputies took him away in cuffs, his face drained, his arrogance dissolving with each step. I held Emily's hand as the room emptied. She was trembling, but she took a long, ragged breath, as if she'd finally unlocked the door to freedom. Justice didn't erase her pain, but it opened a path toward safety. In the weeks after the trial, life did not snap back like a rubber band. Healing, I realized, is unpredictable, a winding road of setbacks and slow, stubborn victories. Emily battled nightmares, sometimes waking in a cold sweat, convinced she could hear Chris at the door. On those nights, I would sit with her, holding her hand until her breathing evened out and the fear faded. With the help of Dr. Naomi Fields, a compassionate therapist, Emily attended weekly sessions. She practiced grounding techniques, naming objects in the room, steadying her breaths, scribbling out anxieties in a journal. It wasn't instant, but every day she grew a little stronger. I watched for small miracles. Emily walking down the street without checking over her shoulder, humming an old tune while she cooked dinner, laughing at a TV rerun. Each moment a step back to herself. My heart swelled to see her healing, layer by layer. As for me, mother, officer, survivor, I carried this story with me each day. When I met women at the precinct who flinched at raised voices or hid bruised wrists behind sleeves, I offered more than directions and paperwork. I offered an attentive ear, a safe place, and the hope that truth, once spoken and documented, could break any cycle. If you're listening and parts of Emily's story resonate, if you feel trapped, silenced, or unsafe, here are steps you can take. If you are in immediate danger, call 911 right away. Your safety comes first. Document everything. Use your phone to take clear, time-stamped photos of injuries. Save threatening texts, voicemails, and emails. Back up evidence to a secure online account. Seek medical attention and ask for detailed records outlining your injuries. Hospitals can photograph injuries and store them with your file. Request printed copies if possible. Investigate any legal documents involving shared property. Obtain notarized copies and verify signatures against official records if you suspect any tampering. Connect with advocates and support networks. Local hotlines, shelters, or counseling services are out there. Even when you feel most isolated, you are not alone. If you take away just one thing, let it be this: silence fuels the cycle. Speaking up, even if your voice shakes, is the first step toward freedom. If this story moved you, share it, right now. Comment below with your hometown or something that gives you hope. Your story could help someone else feel less alone. Remember, the law cannot answer every pain, but hope begins the moment you say, "I won't be silent anymore."